The Krail Dominion had been the nightmare that haunted every species in the known galaxy for 3,000 years. These weren't just soldiers or warriors. They were living weapons engineered by evolution itself to be the perfect killing machines. Standing 12 feet tall, their bodies were covered in obsidian-black exoskeletons that could deflect plasma fire like it was nothing more than a gentle breeze. Each of their 4 arms ended in talons sharp enough to tear through reinforced steel, and their mandibles could crush bone with a single snap. They didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners unless it served a purpose. They simply conquered, and they were devastatingly good at it. 427 different civilizations had faced the Krail over the centuries. Some had tried to fight. Some had tried to run. Some had surrendered immediately, hoping for mercy. The result was always the same. Every single one of those civilizations either knelt before the Dominion or was wiped from existence entirely. The Krail didn't lose. They had never lost. Losing wasn't even a concept they understood anymore. So when their long-range scouts detected a small human mining operation on Kepler 442b, a dusty rock on the edge of unclaimed space, Commander Kthax barely gave it a second thought. His scanning officer had presented the data with the usual efficiency. Bipedal creatures, average height around 6 feet. Soft skin with no natural armor. No claws, no fangs, no venom sacs. Their bones were hollow and breakable. They required constant oxygen. They couldn't even see properly in the dark. Kthax had looked at those scans and felt something close to boredom. This would be over before lunch. He'd conquered tougher species in his sleep. There were maybe 300 humans down there, miners and their families, scratching away at the planet's mineral deposits like insects digging in dirt. They didn't even have proper military defenses, just some basic shield generators and a handful of plasma turrets that were probably meant for asteroid defense. The attack order went out within minutes. 30 warships, each one capable of reducing a city to ash. Kthax didn't even bother with the full fleet. That would have been overkill, and he wanted at least some challenge to break up the monotony of this sector patrol. The humans did something unexpected, though. They sent a message. Just one, broadcasted on open channels so the entire Krail fleet could hear it. The voice was calm, almost casual, like someone commenting on the weather. "Leave now and we'll forget this happened." Kthax's mandibles clicked together in what passed for Krail laughter. The sound echoed through his command bridge and his officers joined in. These soft little creatures actually thought they were in a position to make demands. They thought a simple warning would send the Dominion running. It was adorable, really. Like watching a mouse threaten a tiger. He didn't even bother responding. There was nothing to say. The Krail would descend, they would take what they wanted, and these humans would learn the same lesson every other species had learned. You don't challenge the Dominion. You don't threaten the Krail. You just die quietly and make room for your betters. Down on the surface of Kepler 442b, Colony Director Mike Peterson stood in the command center watching the Krail fleet grow larger on the tracking screens. He'd been a miner for 20 years before taking this administrative position. Started as a tunnel rat on Mars, worked his way up through the asteroid belt operations, and finally landed this gig as director of a frontier colony. He was a stocky man with calloused hands and a face weathered by years of hard work in harsh environments. Next to him, his security chief Tyler Brooks was already pulling up evacuation routes. "How long do we have?" Tyler asked. Mike checked the numbers. 20 minutes, maybe 30 if we're lucky. Get everyone into the deep tunnels. Section 9 through 14. Those are the oldest parts of the mine, reinforced for seismic activity. You really think we can hold them off down there? Tyler's voice carried doubt. Mike allowed himself a small smile. Hold them off? No. But we're gonna make them wish they'd listened to our warning. Get Cody and his demo team ready. Tell Jessica to prep the industrial equipment. And someone find Brandon. We're gonna need his expertise with the ventilation systems. Tyler nodded and started barking orders into his comm. People began moving with practiced efficiency. These weren't soldiers. They were miners, engineers, families who'd come out to the frontier to build something. But every single one of them knew how to work in dangerous conditions. They knew how to handle explosives, how to operate heavy machinery, how to survive when everything went wrong. Mike Peterson watched the Krail ships begin their descent and cracked his knuckles. "All right, boys and girls," he said into the colony-wide channel. "Time to teach these bugs why you don't corner miners. Welcome to our world." The Krail assault was textbook perfect, at least by their standards. 30 warships descended on the mining colony like birds of prey, their weapons systems lighting up the sky with plasma fire. The human defenses tried to fight back, but it was like throwing rocks at a tank. Shield generators overloaded within the first hour. The plasma turrets managed to scratch a few Krail hull plates before they were reduced to molten slag. By the third hour, the communications array was gone. By the sixth hour, every single surface structure had been flattened or was burning. Commander Kthax watched from orbit with satisfaction. Right on schedule. Now came the easy part. He ordered his warriors down into the mines to root out the survivors. 2,000 of his best troops, armed with plasma rifles and energy blades, descended into the tunnel networks. They moved with confidence, their heavy boots echoing through the passages. Some of them were already arguing about who would get the honor of executing the colony director. But something was wrong. The tunnels were empty. No cowering humans. No desperate last stands. Just silence and darkness. Kthax's warriors spread out, moving deeper into the mine system, following the layout their sensors had mapped from orbit. They expected to find the humans huddled in some central chamber, maybe trying to negotiate or beg for their lives. Instead they found hell. The first sign of trouble came from Section 7. A full platoon of 50 Krail warriors had just entered when Mike Peterson's voice crackled over the stolen comm system. Collapse Section 7. The Krail didn't even have time to react. Explosive charges that had been carefully placed along every support beam detonated simultaneously. Tons of rock and metal came crashing down, and 50 of the Dominion's finest warriors were buried alive in an instant. Their screams cut off abruptly as the tunnel became their tomb. Kthax felt a moment of confusion. That had been deliberate. Planned. These weren't scared colonists running blindly. They were fighting back. Then Section 9 reported contact. They'd found some mining equipment and were moving to secure it when industrial cutting lasers suddenly activated. But these weren't being used to cut rock anymore. Engineer Jake Morrison had rewired them, turned them into weapons. The high-powered beams sliced through Krail armor like it was paper. Warriors who had never felt real pain in combat suddenly found themselves missing limbs, their impenetrable exoskeletons meaning nothing against tools designed to cut through solid stone. In Section 12, another squad triggered what they thought was a cave-in. Instead, industrial drilling equipment activated, the massive rotary heads grinding through everything in their path. The Krail tried to retreat but found the tunnel behind them had been sealed. They were trapped with machines that didn't care how tough their armor was. Kthax was barking orders now, trying to coordinate his forces, but the humans had thought of that too. They'd studied Krail communications from intercepted signals. Brandon Wolf, who'd worked in signals intelligence before becoming a miner, was jamming their frequencies and broadcasting false orders. Krail units were running into each other, confused and disoriented in the darkness. Then the gas attack started. Jake Morrison sat in a sealed control room 3 levels down, his fingers dancing over the keyboard. The colony's oxygen processors and ventilation systems were sophisticated pieces of equipment, designed to keep air breathable in the deep tunnels. But Jake had spent 6 hours rewiring them before the Krail arrived. Now, instead of clean oxygen, they were pumping carbon monoxide into sealed sections. The Krail's sensors didn't detect it until warriors started collapsing. Their biology wasn't that different from humans when it came to oxygen deprivation. They just died harder. They want our colony? Jake muttered to himself as he rerouted more toxic gas into Section 15. Fine. They can have it. One death trap at a time. In other sections, the humans used mining explosives as improvised grenades. They collapsed ceilings strategically, cutting off Krail advance parties from their support. They rerouted coolant systems, flooding tunnels with superheated liquid. They used every trick, every tool, every piece of equipment at their disposal. Conveyor belts became crude but effective catapults for debris. Hydraulic lifts crushed warriors against ceilings. Even the mine carts became weapons, sent rolling down inclines at high speed to smash into Krail formations. Mike Peterson coordinated everything from his command post, moving his people through passages the Krail hadn't mapped yet. Tyler, take your team through the old shaft to Section 20. Set charges on the main support columns. Cody, I need you to rig the water pumps. If they push into the lower levels, flood them. Jessica, how are we looking on the eastern tunnels? The battle lasted for 8 hours. When it was over, Kthax had lost 200 warriors. 200. The Dominion hadn't lost that many soldiers in a single engagement in over a decade. These weren't even soldiers he was fighting. They were miners, workers, families, and they'd butchered his elite forces using nothing but mining equipment and terrain knowledge. Kthax pulled his remaining forces back to orbit, his mandibles trembling with rage. Fine. If these humans wanted to hide in their holes, he would simply destroy the entire planet. No more ground assault. No more honor in combat. He would glass Kepler 442b from space and be done with it. He began charging his ship's main weapons, preparing to reduce the surface to molten rock. That's when Admiral Tom Bradley dropped out of faster-than-light travel with humanity's Third Fleet right on top of them. Admiral Tom Bradley had been commanding warships for 30 years, and he'd learned one crucial lesson in all that time. When facing a stronger opponent, you don't fight their fight. You make them fight yours. His fleet consisted of 18 ships compared to the Krail's 30 remaining warships, and on paper, it wasn't even close. Each Krail dreadnought outgunned his heaviest cruiser by a factor of 3. Their armor was thicker. Their shields were stronger. In a straight-up slugging match, humanity would lose badly. So Bradley had no intention of fighting fair. "Launch drone swarms," he ordered calmly, like he was asking someone to pass the salt. "I want 3,000 units in space within 60 seconds. Target their sensor arrays first, weapon systems second." The human ships opened up, and suddenly space was filled with thousands of small autonomous drones. They weren't individually dangerous, just small craft about the size of a refrigerator, but there were so many of them. They moved in coordinated patterns that the Krail computers couldn't predict, weaving between ships, attaching to hulls, targeting specific systems. Thax watched in confusion as his sensors started going haywire. These drones were jamming everything, creating false readings, making it impossible to get a clear picture of the battlefield. His targeting computers kept locking onto phantom signals. "Destroy those things," he roared. But that was easier said than done. The drones were small, fast, and there were thousands of them. For every 10 his point defense systems destroyed, 20 more appeared. And while his ships were busy swatting at drones, the human vessels were moving. "Helm, evasive pattern Delta," Bradley ordered. "Don't let them get a clean shot." The human ships scattered like a school of fish avoiding a predator. They didn't maintain formation. They didn't hold position. They just moved constantly, unpredictably. Every time a Krail dreadnought lined up a shot, the target was already somewhere else. The humans used debris from the destroyed colony as cover. They hid behind Kepler 442b's small moon. They even used the planet's gravity well to slingshot around for surprise attacks. On the bridge of Bradley's flagship, Commander Kate Williams sat at the electronic warfare station, her fingers flying across multiple screens. She'd been a hacker before joining the Navy, and right now she was in heaven. The Krail communication systems were military-grade, but they'd been designed to fight conventional enemies. They hadn't been designed to fight someone who'd grown up breaking into corporate networks for fun. "Jamming their communications now," Kate reported with a slight smile. "They're blind and deaf, Admiral. I've also injected some false command codes into their network. Half their fleet thinks they're supposed to be defending the northern approach. The other half thinks there's a human carrier group coming from the south. There was no carrier group. But the Krail didn't know that." Bradley nodded. "Weapons, I want missile spreads Alpha through Gamma. Mix in the EMP warheads with conventional explosives. Let's really confuse them." Human missiles launched in waves, but they didn't just explode. Some released electromagnetic pulses that fried Krail electronics. Others deployed chaff that scattered radar signals. Some split into multiple warheads mid-flight. Others appeared to be duds but were actually delayed fuse weapons that would detonate minutes later when Krail crews thought they were safe. Every single missile barrage was different, forcing the Krail to guess which countermeasures to use. Thax was screaming orders now, all pretense of calm professionalism gone. His ships were stronger, better armed, but they couldn't land a solid hit. These humans were fighting like cowards, refusing to stand and exchange fire like honorable warriors. They hid and ran. They used tricks and deception. They exploited every advantage of their smaller, faster ships. A Krail dreadnought finally managed to corner a human destroyer. Its main cannons charged up, ready to blow the smaller ship apart. Thax felt a moment of satisfaction. Finally, a proper kill. Then the human ship did something insane. Instead of trying to run, it accelerated directly toward the dreadnought. At the last second, it fired its emergency thrusters and spun sideways, sliding past the massive Krail warship close enough to scrape paint. As it passed, it released a full spread of proximity mines directly against the dreadnought's hull. The resulting explosions tore a gash in the Krail ship's armor, and atmosphere began venting into space. "These humans fight without honor," Thax snarled. "Without predictability. Without sense." That was exactly the point. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They'd learned every dirty trick, every ambush tactic, every way to beat a stronger opponent. They'd had world wars, countless smaller conflicts, and they documented every single lesson in their military academies. The Krail had won through superior strength for so long they'd forgotten what real warfare looked like. Bradley's voice cut through the chaos on an open channel. "Vax, this is your last chance. Withdraw now and we'll let you leave. Keep fighting and we'll dismantle your fleet piece by piece." Kthak's response was immediate and furious. He opened a channel to the Dominion homeworld, bypassing normal chain of command. "This is Commander Kthak. I am declaring total war against the human species. Transmitting their homeworld coordinates now. Send everything. I want this species exterminated down to the last child." The message went out across Krail space, a call to arms that would mobilize the entire Dominion military. Hundreds of warships would converge on human territory. It would be a war of annihilation. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Tom Bradley closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He'd hoped to avoid this. Humanity had tried to give them an out, a chance to walk away. But the Krail had just made the worst decision in their 3,000-year history. "Send word to Earth Command," Bradley said quietly. "Tell them to activate Protocol Endgame. The Krail want a war. Let's show them what humanity does when we actually fight back." Protocol Endgame wasn't just a military response. It was humanity's full mobilization, every resource, every mind, every weapon system brought online for a single purpose. Within 48 hours of Kthak's declaration of total war, Earth's governments had dissolved their petty differences and unified under a single command structure. This wasn't about politics anymore. This was about survival. Dr. Helen Park led the xenobiology team at the Geneva Research Facility. She was a brilliant scientist who'd spent 15 years studying extremophile organisms, life forms that thrived in conditions that would kill most creatures. When the Krail specimens arrived, tissue samples taken from the bodies in the Kepler 442b tunnels, she got to work immediately. Her team worked in shifts around the clock, sleeping in the lab, surviving on coffee and determination. 3 weeks later, Helen walked into the military briefing room looking exhausted but triumphant. She pulled up a holographic display of Krail biology. "Their exoskeletons are their greatest strength and their fatal weakness," she explained, zooming in on the molecular structure. "The obsidian-like material resonates at specific frequencies. It's designed to distribute kinetic impact, which is why our conventional weapons barely scratch them. But if we hit them with the right sonic frequency, we can turn that armor against them. The vibrations will amplify through their entire body structure. Essentially, we can make them shake themselves apart from the inside." General Patricia Owens, who was coordinating Earth's defense, leaned forward. "How quickly can we weaponize this?" "Give me Colonel Hayes and his engineering corps," Helen said. 2 weeks, maybe 3. We'll need to retrofit every ship, every ground unit. But it'll work. I guarantee it." Colonel Vincent Hayes took Helen's research and ran with it. His team at the Colorado Springs Weapons Development Facility didn't just build sonic cannons. They built biological agents that targeted the unique protein structures in Krail blood. They developed psychological warfare tactics that exploited the rigid Krail command hierarchy, where soldiers blindly followed orders without question or initiative. They studied every piece of intercepted Krail communication, learning how they thought, how they planned, how they fought. "The Krail have never needed strategy," General Owens explained to her commanders during a secure video conference. Military leaders from every nation were on the call, faces grim but determined. For 3,000 years they've won every battle through brute force. They're the biggest, toughest predator in the galaxy, so they've never had to think tactically. That's their weakness. They can't adapt because they've never needed to. And humanity? Humanity had been adapting for millions of years. Adapting was what humans did best. The Krail fleets came in waves just as Kthak had promised. Hundreds of warships, thousands of warriors, entire armadas bent on human extinction. But each time they attacked, they found humans who fought differently than the time before. Commander Derek Walsh studied human military history obsessively. He read about the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae who held off a Persian army of thousands. He analyzed Napoleon's tactics at Waterloo. He pored over the Battle of Midway, where American pilots turned the tide of the Pacific War. "These strategies come from dead soldiers," Derek told his tactical officers. "People who lived and died hundreds or thousands of years ago. The Krail have never fought anyone who studies history like we do. They don't have military academies teaching ancient tactics. They don't need to because they've always won. But we've been fighting each other since we lived in caves. We know every trick, every feint, every way to beat a stronger enemy. Human forces started winning. Not every battle, but enough. They used Helen's sonic weapons to devastating effect. Krail warriors who'd thought themselves invincible suddenly found their own armor vibrating at lethal frequencies, their exoskeletons cracking and shattering. The biological agents worked even better, targeting specific Krail enzymes and shutting down their enhanced healing factor. Warriors who could normally recover from severe wounds in hours now bled out in minutes. Then the Krail made their ultimate move. They bypassed the outer colonies and struck directly at Earth itself. 200 warships, the largest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled, jumped into the solar system with one goal: exterminate humanity at its source. What they found was a fortress. Earth had been preparing for this moment since humans first looked at the stars and wondered what else was out there. The moon wasn't just a natural satellite anymore. It was a weapons platform bristling with railguns, missile batteries, and energy cannons. Captain Andrew Foster commanded the lunar defenses from Tycho Station, a massive military complex built into the crater itself. All batteries, fire at will, Andrew ordered calmly as the Krail fleet approached. Show these things what a Death World species looks like when we're defending home. The moon lit up like a small sun. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously, filling space with so much ordnance that it looked like a solid wall of destruction. The Krail fleet tried to push through, but they were taking losses before they even reached Earth orbit. Human fighters launched from bases on Mars, from the asteroid belt, from hidden stations throughout the solar system. Every human ship, every pilot, every gunner knew what was at stake. This was it. The final battle. The Krail had never imagined losing. Defeat wasn't part of their culture, their history, their understanding of how the universe worked. They were the apex predators. They won. That's just how it was. But now, as their ships burned and their warriors died by the thousands, as human tactics and weapons and sheer stubborn determination ground them down, they faced a reality their species had never encountered before. They couldn't imagine winning. Not anymore. The war lasted 18 months. When it finally ended, the Krail Dominion wasn't just defeated. It was shattered. Their fleets were scattered across a dozen star systems, burning wrecks drifting in the void. Their homeworld's orbital defenses were rubble. Their military command structure had collapsed entirely. And Commander Kthax, the warrior who'd started this entire nightmare by attacking a simple mining colony, sat in the ruins of his command ship watching his empire crumble. His final transmission went out on every frequency, to every species monitoring the conflict. His voice was broken, defeated, nothing like the proud warrior who'd laughed at human warnings so long ago. If you're listening to this, understand what I learned too late. Humans don't fight to win battles. They fight to ensure you can never, ever threaten them again. They will dismantle everything you are, everything you built, and they won't stop until the threat is gone forever. The galaxy listened. And the galaxy was terrified. But what happened next shocked everyone even more than humanity's victory. Admiral Tom Bradley, the man who'd coordinated the defensive strategy that broke the Krail military machine, transmitted an offer of peace. Not surrender terms. Not demands for tribute. We're not conquerors, Bradley announced in a broadcast to Krail space. We didn't want this war. You forced it on us. But now that it's over, we're not going to become the monsters you were. However, there will be justice. War criminals will stand trial. Those who ordered attacks on civilian populations, those who committed atrocities, they'll answer for their crimes. But your civilians, your non-combatants, they're under our protection now. We'll help you rebuild. But it'll be under our terms, and those terms are non-negotiable. Ambassador Ruth Hayes arrived at the Krail homeworld 3 weeks later. She was a career diplomat who'd spent 20 years negotiating trade agreements and border disputes. Now she was negotiating the terms that would reshape an entire civilization. The Krail leadership expected annihilation. They expected humanity to do to them what they'd done to 427 other species. They expected extermination, orbital bombardment, genocide. Instead, Ruth sat down across from the surviving Krail Council members and laid out terms that were surprisingly fair. The Dominion's military would be dissolved. War criminals would be prosecuted in tribunals that followed human legal standards. Krail territory would be administered by a joint human-Krail government until stability was restored. And most shocking of all, human engineers and aid workers would help rebuild the infrastructure that had been destroyed in the war. The Krail couldn't understand it. Why? One of the council members finally asked. We declared war on your entire species. We tried to exterminate you. Why would you help us? Ruth looked at him with tired eyes. Because that's not who we are. We're not you. We fight when we have to, and we fight hard, but we don't become monsters just because we're fighting monsters. You're beaten. The threat is over. Now comes the hard part of building something better. The treaty was signed within 6 months. But the occupation that followed wasn't gentle. Colonel Diane Mitchell commanded the human peacekeeping forces on the Krail homeworld, and she made sure every Krail understood the new reality. Her troops didn't abuse the population. They didn't loot or terrorize. But they were everywhere, a constant reminder that humanity was in charge now. "We're here to help," Diane told a gathering of Krail community leaders. "We're going to rebuild your cities, restore your infrastructure, make sure you have food and medicine and security. But let me be absolutely clear about something. If you cross us again, if any Krail anywhere tries to restart this war, you'll remember exactly why you lost. We showed mercy once. We won't show it twice." The message spread throughout Krail space and beyond. The species that had been the galaxy's apex predators for 3 millennia were now a cautionary tale. Other civilizations watched what happened to the Dominion and learned. Some learned to fear humanity. Others learned to respect them. All of them learned not to provoke them. Back on Earth, Director Russell Webb sat in the Global Defense Command headquarters, updating humanity's first contact protocols. These documents would guide how humans interacted with every alien species they encountered going forward. He wrote carefully, choosing each word with precision. "Humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all intelligent species. We are not aggressors. We are not conquerors. We don't seek conflict or domination. But if you force us to fight, if you threaten our people or our worlds, we will show you what kind of species survives on a death world. We come from a planet that has tried to kill us for millions of years. We evolved alongside predators that could tear us apart. We survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and thousands of years of warfare against our own kind. We learn not just to survive but to thrive. We don't just win battles. We end wars. Permanently." The protocols were distributed to every human ship, every colony, every diplomatic mission. And throughout the galaxy, species that had once dismissed humanity as another weak, soft species revised their assessments. The Krail had been the most feared species in the known galaxy for 3,000 years. They'd learned the hard way that fear alone isn't enough. That strength alone isn't enough. That being the biggest predator doesn't matter if you're fighting a species that learned to hunt predators. Never start a battle with humans. Because they'll make sure you can't start another one.